Hello and welcome to AI Future or Fiction. In today's episode, we delve into the paradox of perfection. Have you ever wondered why we reject a logical decision just because a machine made it? Imagine a system that manages every second of your day with relentless efficiency, yet ignores your human reality. For a labor organizer battling the code, this supposed objectivity is an invisible cape. We are facing algorithm aversion. While the world pursues pure logic, an unsettling question arises. Do you prefer perfect justice dictated by data or imperfect justice created by people? Let us begin then with our story. Elena walked through the warehouse as the hum of machines filled the air. She had been a labor organizer for 20 years and always negotiated with flesh and blood people. But this month, the atmosphere had changed drastically. Her interlocutors were no longer managers, but invisible lines of code that controlled everything. The new automated management system promised an era of total fairness. According to the company, data would eliminate bias and favoritism from supervisors. No one would get benefits for being friends with the boss anymore. The machine assigned shifts and breaks with surgical precision based on productivity. However, the reality on the floor was very different. Elena saw colleagues like Lucas, a veteran who always met his goals. The algorithm assigned him the night shift consecutively for 10 days. The system did not understand that the body of a 55-year-old man needs rest. For the code, Lucas was simply the most efficient resource for that schedule. This supposed objectivity ignored the complexities of daily life. A mother who arrives late due to a medical emergency is automatically penalized by the system. There is no room for explanation or empathy. The coldness of data has replaced the dialogue that kept the community cohesive. Elena began to notice that physical exhaustion was mixed with a silent rage. Employees felt observed by an eye that never blinks. The frustration was not due to hard work, but to the lack of autonomy. They felt like parts of an engine that could be replaced if they failed minimally. What value does logic have if it destroys the worker's well-being? Elena understood that true oppression does not always come from malice. Sometimes it arises from an obsessive search for mathematical perfection. Faceless justice was becoming the worst of tyrannies for her people. At the end of the day, Elena found a group gathered at the exit. They were not discussing wages, but the impossibility of reasoning with a screen. The spark of resistance was lit in their tired eyes. Elena knew that soon they would have to decide between accepting the machine's logic or fighting for their own humanity. The conflict was set, and the algorithm had not foreseen it. The perfection of data was about to collide with the imperfection of the human spirit. Human psychology reveals a deep rift in our relationship with code. Surely you have forgiven a friend for being late or a boss for a miscalculation. However, when the machine fails, your patience immediately runs out. This phenomenon is known as algorithm aversion. Studies suggest that we lose trust in automated systems much faster than in people. If a human supervisor commits an injustice, we can attribute it to tiredness or a bad day. But before a screen, there is no context or possible redemption. The true root of the conflict is not the technical error, but the exclusion from the process. Elena feels that the logic of power has moved into a locked room. When you don't understand how a decision that affects your life is made, you stop being a participant. You become an object within what we call the architecture of choice. This structure is designed to guide you towards specific outcomes without you noticing the threads that move you. The company sells efficiency, but what it actually installs is an insurmountable glass wall. The worker is no longer a collaborator, but a data point that must fit into a predetermined cell. This lack of autonomy generates an alienation that goes beyond the physical fatigue of employees. It is the emptiness of knowing that your voice does not have a frequency recognized by the system. Why do we resist with such force a logic that seems impeccable? The answer lies in our intrinsic need to be seen and understood. Mathematical perfection ignores that justice is, by definition, a deeply human and subjective concept. As Elena observes her colleagues, she realizes that rebellion is a search for meaning. They are not fighting against a useful tool, but against the feeling of being invisible to power. Pure logic has forgotten that chaos is part of our essence. The system continues to process data without detecting that discontent is a variable it cannot measure. If technology eliminates our capacity to choose, what is left of us as humans? Perhaps the greatest risk is not that the machine fails, but that it always succeeds. The tension grows in the warehouse like an echo that the algorithm prefers to ignore. Elena knows that efficiency has a price that no one is willing to pay eternally. The question floating in the air is unsettling. Do you prefer chaotic freedom or a perfectly organized cage? Elena was left alone in the office as she watched the constant flickering of the screen. Behind every performance graph was a language she didn't entirely speak. But she understood something fundamental. That supposed mathematical neutrality was nothing more than a disguise for very specific human decisions. We have been taught to trust numbers because they seem to lack feelings. If a piece of data says someone is inefficient, we tend to accept it as an absolute truth. However, Elena understood that the algorithm was a trap of objectivity. Someone had decided which values mattered more than others. The system was not an impartial judge, but a series of political preferences disguised as code. Prioritizing speed over the health of a veteran like Lucas is a choice. It is not a law of physics. It is a statement of principles that places profit above well-being. These lines of code hide silent sacrifices that always affect the most vulnerable. The mother who arrives late due to an emergency is not a technical failure. For the machine's logic, she is simply a variable that lowers the average. The algorithm discards her to maintain the purity of its metrics. Elena discovered that there is no such thing as an algorithm free of social values. Each time a variable is adjusted, it is decided who wins and who loses in the real world. The coldness of the calculation serves to ensure that those responsible do not have to look in the eyes of those they punish. The real danger is not that the machine is intelligent, but that its logic is exclusionary. We have built a glass cage where the keys are made of mathematical functions. The doubt that now tormented Elena was much deeper. What place is left for those who don't fit the average? If justice is reduced to an optimization calculation, truth will ignore us completely. The answer was hidden in the empty corridors of the warehouse. Technical perfection was hiding a profoundly human injustice. What happens when the system decides that you are the error? Elena watched her colleagues walk towards their stations with a new and heavy resignation. It wasn't just the fatigue of night shifts or the rigor of impossible goals. What she perceived in the atmosphere was something much deeper and more dangerous for the company: the loss of consent. According to various analyses of algorithmic governance, this is the exact moment where institutions begin to crumble from within. When a decision feels inevitable and not chosen, the social contract binding the worker to the organization breaks. Elena understood that the real problem wasn't that the system failed. The conflict arose because no one could question the algorithm when it was right, but at the cost of human health. In the warehouse aisles, dialogue had died. If you cannot complain, you cease to be a collaborator and become a subject of the code. This phenomenon is known as the crisis of public acceptance. International evidence shows that extreme efficiency functions as a trap that erodes long-term stability. The company celebrated increased productivity in its charts, but ignored the resentment growing in the shadows. By prioritizing immediate data, they were sacrificing loyalty for mathematical precision that doesn't understand fatigue. Excessive automation has created an institutional responsibility vacuum. Elena remembered the times when a negotiation could change the course of the week. Now, the system dictated unappealable sentences that everyone obeyed out of fear, not conviction. When human will is displaced by a logical function, commitment vanishes. People simply stop believing in the fairness of their own work. So then, what happens to a community when its members feel their voice is irrelevant? The stability of any institution depends on the perception that the system is fair and reversible. However, in this new architecture of power, the ability to rectify has disappeared. Elena wondered if the executives understood the risk of governing through glass walls. The algorithm continued optimizing routes and times with impeccable coldness. Meanwhile, the very foundation of the organization became fragile and brittle. Absolute efficiency is leading us to a dead end where technical progress is paid for with dehumanization. If the future is an automatic decision, where is our right to participate in our own history? The air in the executive's office was charged with an electric tension. Productivity charts, once ascending and glorious, now showed an inexplicable free fall. It was not a server error nor a computer virus. It was something engineers had not foreseen in their simulation models. The workers were still there, but their will had disconnected from the system. Elena and her team's silent resistance had achieved the impossible. It had turned mathematical efficiency into a desert of inactivity. The executives understood that they could not govern a warehouse of purposeless ghosts. Instead of applying more sanctions, the company took an unexpected step. They called Elena to sit in front of the system's programmers. In that meeting room, the conflict found a crack through which to breathe. The experts understood that the protests were not simple code failures. They were clear signs that the original design was incomplete. It was the birth of what we know today as cooperative governance. Imagine a system where data logic is not the last word. Elena helped introduce human feedback loops into the heart of the software. Now, if the system assigns an unfair shift, there is a mechanism for immediate appeal. It is no longer a machine dictating orders from a vacuum. It is a tool that learns from the flexibility and compassion of those who use it. They have integrated values like rest and family urgency into the equations. Supposed perfection has given way to a much more organic and real harmony. Elena feels they have regained the right to participate in their own work destiny. The glass wall has become a door open to dialogue. However, this balance is fragile and requires constant vigilance. Is it possible that we have created a lasting peace between man and code? Or perhaps we have only learned to better decorate the bars of our technological cage. Doubt persists while the new system blinks with a softer light. Perhaps true freedom is not escaping technology. It is ensuring that we can always say no when logic ignores us. Calm has returned to the warehouse, but it is not the same silence as before. Elena's story leaves us with a truth that data cannot process. We have discovered that efficiency, however polished, is always a secondary objective. A perfect system is useless if the people inhabiting it feel like disposable parts. The true foundation of any society is not logic, but trust. Without that invisible fabric, the world's most advanced algorithm is just a glass cage. Technology must be the echo of our will, not the architect of our destiny. If code ignores human well-being, it ceases to be a tool and becomes an obstacle. The architecture of choice constantly surrounds us. Every time we design a system, we are deciding what kind of humanity we want to foster. Prioritizing social well-being over gross performance is not a miscalculation. It is the only way to ensure that progress is truly for everyone. The future is not about machines replacing us. It is about humans choosing how those machines should serve us. We have learned that artificial intelligence cannot govern alone. It needs our compassion and our critical judgment to avoid becoming an invisible tyranny. Mathematical efficiency can never replace the warmth of a mutual agreement. Elena looks at the screen one last time. She knows they have won a battle, but doubt persists in the air. Have we regained control, or have we just made the cage more comfortable? Perhaps the greatest risk is not that the machine will rebel against us someday. The unsettling thing is that we get used to it always being right. The line between help and domination is extremely thin. In the end, what defines us is our ability to question perfection. Are we ready to live in a world where doubt is more valuable than data? The answer is not written in any code, but in our own determination to remain human. You have seen how Elena managed to break the glass wall, but the doubt persists. Have we really regained control? Or have we only softened the edges of our own technological cage? Thank you for joining us on this journey through the limits of logic and human essence. On AI Future or Fiction, we explore these cracks on this channel to understand who truly designs your destiny. If this story has made you question what you took for granted, subscribe and share your opinion in the comments. Your voice is the only variable the code will never be able to predict. See you in the next episode. There we will keep asking, is the future made for you? Or are you being designed for the future of others?